At 5:47 on a Tuesday evening, the lobby of Prescott Meridian Group sat nearly empty. Nearly, because one man was still in the same chair he had taken at 8 that morning. Ryan Prescott sat with his jacket folded across his lap, work boots flat on the polished floor. 9 hours. 4 employees passed him on their way out. One pointed. Another laughed, loud enough for the sound to carry across the marble. He's still here. Ryan did not look up. Laura Pemberton came through the glass corridor from the east wing. She stopped, looked at the man in the chair, then at the front desk. Who is he? Some contractor. Mr. Archer said to let him wait. Laura crossed the lobby, sat down in the chair directly across from his, and said nothing. The overhead lights dimmed on their automatic timer. Neither of them moved. 9 hours in a chair without a word. What those 9 hours cost everyone in that building, nobody saw coming. This is that story, and it starts long before anyone in that lobby laughed. Ryan Prescott lived 12 miles outside Pittsburgh in a rented 2-bedroom off Route 19. He woke at 5:15 every morning, packed a lunch, and drove a 10-year-old pickup to whatever site needed him that week. Roof patches in Crafton, porch repairs in Dormont, bathroom remodels in Bethel Park. The truck had a dent in the tailgate from a backing mishap 2 winters ago, and he had never fixed it. There was always something more pressing. His daughter Kate was 9. She sat at the kitchen table every evening with a book propped against the sugar jar, reading while Ryan cooked. When dinner was ready, she would close the book, set the table without being told, and eat in comfortable silence across from her father. It had been the two of them since the summer of 2023, when Ellen Prescott was killed by a distracted driver on the Parkway East interchange. Kate had been 6. What nobody in Ryan's current life knew was that at 29, he had founded Prescott Meridian Group, a commercial construction and infrastructure development firm. He had started it with $80,000, a used drafting table in a garage in Brookline, and a single contract to pour foundations for a warehouse complex in Monroeville. By 2022, the company had grown to 411 employees and $180 million in annual revenue. Ryan had designed its bid structure, built its subcontractor network, and personally negotiated its first municipal contract with the city of Pittsburgh. Then Ellen died. He could not walk into the Grant Street headquarters, could not sit in the conference room where her photograph hung in the hallway. For 3 weeks after the funeral, he answered no calls, opened no mail, drove nowhere but the house and the cemetery. By September of that year, he had signed operational authority over to the board. He retained 58% ownership through Prescott Holdings LLC, a structure his attorney had set up in 2021. And he retained one obligation he had never discussed with anyone, a personal guarantee on the company's $12 million payroll credit facility with First National Bank of Western Pennsylvania. Every 2 weeks, 411 employees received their paychecks because Ryan Prescott's name was on the guarantee. His signature, his credit, his word to the bank. Not the board's, his alone. Glenn Archer was 51, born and raised in Squirrel Hill, and he had been the company's chief operating officer since 2020. Within 6 months of Ryan's withdrawal, Glenn had restructured internal access protocols, removed Ryan's name from the employee directory, and installed himself as the sole contact for all shareholder communications. He told the board that Ryan preferred no involvement. He told new hires the name on the building was historical. And when Ryan's attorney sent quarterly report requests, as the operating agreement required, Glenn's office received them, stamped them, and replied to none. Laura Pemberton had been CEO for 18 months, appointed by the board on Glenn's recommendation. She was 34, sharp, and frustrated. Every cost reduction initiative she proposed hit the same wall. Glenn's signature on subcontractor agreements she had never approved, vendor relationships she had never seen, and budget lines that shifted between quarters without justification. She had asked about the majority shareholder once, in her second week. Glenn told her the shareholder preferred complete distance. She accepted this because Glenn controlled the information. What brought Ryan to Pittsburgh that Tuesday was a letter, the fourth his attorney had sent over 14 months, this time by certified mail, requesting quarterly financial disclosures. The first 3 had gone unanswered. The fourth came back signed for, but with no response attached. No financials. No explanation. Ryan's attorney said it plainly. Something was being blocked. Ryan hung up, sat at his kitchen table for 20 minutes, and drove to Pittsburgh. He walked into the lobby at 8 in the morning and told the receptionist he needed to speak with whoever was running operations. The receptionist called Glenn's office. Glenn's assistant called back 2 minutes later. No appointment on file. He can wait. And Ryan waited. The following morning, Laura arrived at the Grant Street building at 7:45. She took her usual route through the lobby toward the East Wing elevator and stopped. The same man from the night before was sitting in the same chair. Same jacket across his lap. Same boots on the floor. He had not slept in the building. The security log showed he had left at 6:18 the previous evening and re-entered at 7:32 this morning. He had driven home, slept, and come back. Laura walked to the front desk and pulled the visitor log from the morning sign and binder. The name written in block capitals on yesterday's line said Ryan Prescott. She read it once, then again. Then she looked up at the brushed steel letters mounted above the lobby entrance. Prescott Meridian Group. She did not go to her office. She did not check her email. She went downstairs. The basement archive at Prescott Meridian held 9 years of accumulated project documentation, permits, site photographs, environmental filings, municipal correspondence, legal records. Laura had been down there twice before, both times to pull environmental compliance records for a public bid submission. The archive was being digitized that quarter as part of a records management initiative she had approved in January. Half the filing cabinets were tagged with color-coded stickers indicating which boxes had been scanned. In the third cabinet of the second row, she found a framed photograph, 8 by 10, still in its original mat. The image showed a groundbreaking ceremony from March of 2017. A man in a hard hat and steel-toed boots standing in front of a half-dug foundation pit, holding a ceremonial shovel. Behind him, a vinyl banner read Prescott Meridian Group, groundbreaking, March 2017. The man was younger in the photograph, but the jaw was the same. The posture was the same. The way he held his weight, slightly forward, shoulders level, like a man used to standing on uneven ground, was the same. Laura carried the photograph upstairs to the 4th floor. She went to Glenn's corner office and set the frame on the edge of his desk without sitting down. Ryan Prescott, she said. Who is he? Glenn did not touch the photograph. He did not look at it for more than a second. Former consultant. His advisory contract ended years ago. I'll handle it. His last name is the same as the company's name. It's a common name. Pittsburgh has a lot of Prescotts. Laura picked up the photograph. She did not argue. She did not raise her voice. She walked out, closed the door behind her, and returned to her own office on the opposite side of the floor. She set the photograph on her desk, next to her monitor. She leaned back in her chair and looked at it for a long time. The man sitting in the lobby downstairs shared a last name with the company printed on the walls, the stationery, the business cards, and the steel letters above the front door. And the man in the photograph from 2017 shared a face with the man in the chair. Glenn had dismissed both facts in under 10 seconds with a half sentence and a shrug. Laura did not believe him, and for the first time since she had taken this job, she did not pretend to. That evening, after the last of the 4th floor staff had gone home, Laura took the elevator to the 2nd floor and knocked on the door marked Office Services. Bev Loomis, manager. Bev was 62. She had worked at Prescott Meridian for 22 years, since before the company moved to the Grant Street building, before the lobby had marble floors or automatic lighting, before the employee count passed 30. She had watched the company grow from a single contract outfit operating out of a rented office in Brookline to a regional firm with a $180 million revenue line. She had seen every CEO, every board chair, every holiday party, every layoff, every expansion. Laura set the photograph on Bev's desk. I need access to the original shareholder registry and the founding corporate documents. The digital copies were moved to a restricted folder. I don't have admin clearance, and IT says the permissions were changed 18 months ago. Bev looked at the photograph. Her hand came to rest on the edge of the frame. She held it there the way a person holds something familiar, not with surprise, but with the weight of recognition. She said nothing for a long time. Then she stood, pulled a set of keys from her top desk drawer, and unlocked a heavy steel filing cabinet bolted to the wall behind her chair. She placed her hand flat on a thick manila folder inside, held it there. Then she closed the cabinet door, locked it, and sat back down. You should ask him directly, she said. Laura went back down to the lobby. Ryan was still in the same chair. She carried 2 paper cups of coffee from the third-floor break room and sat down across from him. She held one out. He took it. He wrapped both hands around the cup and held it without drinking for a moment, the way a man holds something warm after a long day in the cold. They talked. He told her about the contracting work, the porch rebuild in Crafton that was running long because the original framing had been done with undersized joists. A slate roof in Dormont where half the tiles had been replaced with asphalt shingles sometime in the 1980s and nobody had noticed until the flashing failed. She asked how long he had been doing that kind of work. He said a few years. She asked if he was from Pittsburgh. He said he had lived here most of his adult life. Then she said, "Do you have any connection to this company?" Ryan looked across the lobby, at the steel letters, at the elevator bank, at the corridor that led to the east wing. He took a slow drink of coffee. "I used to walk through here every day," he said. Laura waited for more. Nothing came, but she noticed things. His hands, the calluses across both palms, the nicked knuckles, the permanent tan line from work gloves that stopped at the wrist, and the way he described the building when he talked about it. He mentioned the load-bearing walls on the east side as if he had placed them. He referred to the original HVAC routing by zone number. He knew the year the elevator system had been upgraded and the name of the company that installed it. He said it all casually, the way a man talks about his own house, not like someone reading a blueprint, but like someone who had drawn one. She finished her coffee without pressing further. When she stood up, she carried the empty cup back to her office and set it on her desk next to the photograph. The Federal Bridge overpass project on the eastern edge of Pittsburgh carried a bid value of $40 million. It was Prescott Meridian's largest active contract, awarded through a competitive municipal procurement process, and it was running 11 weeks behind schedule. Laura had flagged the delays twice in executive committee meetings. Glenn had attributed them to permit processing backlogs at the county level and a stretch of heavy rain in April. Both explanations were plausible on the surface. Neither had been verified. Ryan drove to the construction site the next morning. He wore the same work jacket, the same boots, the same posture. He walked through the perimeter gate the way any subcontractor inspector would, clipboard in hand, hard hat from the visitor rack, no badge required. Nobody stopped him. Nobody asked his name. Construction sites are full of men who look exactly like Ryan Prescott, and that was the point. He spent 2 hours walking the site layout. He checked the subcontractor assignment board posted inside the field trailer, a printed roster showing every company assigned to the project, their scope, their daily crew count, and their billing rate. 3 company names stood out. Ryan pulled his phone and searched the Pennsylvania contractor licensing database. 2 of the 3 had no active license on file. The third had a registered business address that matched a residential duplex in Wilkinsburg. No office, no yard, no equipment. He photographed the board, the material delivery logs stacked in a wire basket on the trailer desk, and the daily labor sign in sheets pinned to a corkboard by the door. 3 companies drawing pay every 2 weeks. 0 equipment on site. 0 names on any daily sign and sheet for the past 5 months. Ghost contractors, companies that existed only on paper, invoicing for work that no one performed. Laura arrived at the site that afternoon for a scheduled progress walk with the project manager. She found Ryan inside the trailer, standing over the drafting table, studying a set of structural drawings spread flat across the surface. He had a pencil behind his ear and a small notepad in his shirt pocket. "What are you doing here?" she said. Ryan looked up, checking load paths. She stepped closer. The drawings were the structural engineering sheets for the upper deck pour, the most critical phase of the overpass construction. Ryan had his finger on a column to beam connection detail on sheet S14. "This calculation assumes a 40-pound per square foot live load on the upper deck," he said. "But the spec sheet for the precast planks they actually ordered only rates to 32. Someone swapped the material without updating the structural engineering. If they pour on this, the numbers don't hold." Laura looked at the detail, then at Ryan's hand on the drawing, then at his face. "You read structural drawings?" she said. "I read a lot of things." He capped his pencil, slipped the notepad back into his pocket, and walked out of the trailer. Laura stood at the drafting table for a full minute after he left, her hand resting on the edge of the drawing where his had been. Outside, the site noise continued, the rattle of rebar delivery, the backup alarm of a loader, but inside the trailer, nothing moved. 2 days later, Glenn Archer called Ryan into a conference room on the ground floor of the Grant Street building. Not the main boardroom on 4. Not Glenn's own office. Conference B, the smallest meeting room on the first floor, usually reserved for vendor check-ins and delivery schedule reviews. The table seated 4. The overhead light had a flicker that nobody had reported. Glenn closed the door behind them and stood with his back against it, arms at his sides. The fluorescent light above the table had a faint flicker that nobody had reported in months. "You went to my site," Glenn said. Ryan pulled out a chair and sat down. He placed his hands flat on the table, palms down, fingers spread, the same way he had rested them on his knees in the lobby for 9 hours. "You left this company 3 years ago," Glenn said. His voice was level, but his jaw was tight, and his weight shifted forward onto his toes. "You signed the papers. You walked out. Nobody asked you to come back. Nobody wants you here. You are not part of this operation anymore." Ryan said nothing. He looked at Glenn the way a man looks at a wall he is deciding whether to take down, measuring load paths, checking for wiring, not reacting. "I am going to issue a formal trespass notice," Glenn continued. He stepped away from the door and placed both hands on the opposite edge of the table, leaning in. "Effective today, you are barred from every property owned or leased by Prescott Meridian Group, every building, every project site, every parking structure. If you set foot on any of them after today, I will call the police and have you removed." The room was quiet except for the flicker of the overhead light. Ryan held the look for 3 full seconds. Then he glanced at the nameplate on the conference room door, a small brass rectangle that read Prescott Meridian Group, Conference B. He looked at it the way a man looks at something he built with his own hands and has not seen in a long time. He had chosen those brass plates from a catalog in 2018. He remembered the order number. Then he stood up, stepped past Glenn without touching him, opened the door, and walked into the hallway without a word. Laura was standing 15 feet down the corridor, next to the water fountain. She had been heading to the stairwell when Glenn's voice carried through the thin drywall, not the full words, but the tone. The kind of tone that makes a person stop walking and stand still. She had waited. Ryan came through the conference room door and saw her. He stopped. "Who are you?" she said. Not angry, not suspicious. The question was level and direct and had no decoration on it. Ryan looked at her. He looked at the hallway around them, the dropped ceiling tiles, the fire suppression heads he had specified himself 9 years ago, the carpet he had chosen from a sample book in a supplier's showroom in Cranberry Township. Every surface in this building had passed through his hands at some point. Every specification had carried his initials. And not a single person walking these halls knew that. "I'm exactly who the visitor log says I am," he said. He walked to the lobby, picked up his jacket from the chair, and pushed through the front doors into the evening air. He did not turn around. Laura stood in the hallway for a long moment. At the far end, behind the reception counter, Bev Loomis was sorting outgoing mail. She had watched the entire exchange through the glass partition without moving, without speaking. But when Laura finally turned back toward the elevator, Bev set down the stack of envelopes, opened her desk drawer, and picked up her keys. The next morning, Laura was standing at Bev's office door when she arrived at 7:30. "I need that folder," Laura said. Bev did not ask which one. She unlocked the steel filing cabinet, pulled the thick manila folder from the bottom shelf, and placed it flat on the desk. She stepped back and sat down in her chair. Inside were 4 documents arranged in chronological order. Laura read them one at a time with her office door closed. The first was the operating agreement for Prescott Holdings LLC, filed with the Pennsylvania Department of State in October of 2021. The sole member was listed as Ryan M. Prescott. The entity's primary asset was a 58% equity stake in Prescott Meridian Group. The agreement specified voting rights, quarterly disclosure requirements, and a clause granting the sole member the right to call a board review at any time and for any reason. The second was the payroll credit facility agreement between Prescott Meridian Group and First National Bank of Western Pennsylvania. Revolving credit limit, $12 million. Personal guarantor, Ryan M. Prescott. The guarantee required annual renewal. The most recent renewal had been signed and notarized in January of 2026, 7 months ago. Ryan's signature, witnessed by a bank officer in Pittsburgh. The same man in the lobby chair had walked into a bank 7 months ago and personally re-signed his name to guarantee that every single employee in this building would continue to receive a paycheck. The third document was a stack of 14 letters. Each one was printed on the letterhead of the law firm representing Prescott Holdings LLC. Each one requested quarterly financial disclosures as required by the operating agreement. Each one was addressed to the Office of the Chief Operating Officer, Prescott Meridian Group, and each one had been stamped in red ink with the word received and a date. One letter every month for 14 consecutive months. None of them had been forwarded to the board. None had been forwarded to the CEO. None had been answered. They had been received, stamped, and buried. The fourth was a certified mail return receipt from 6 weeks prior. The final letter, the one that had prompted Ryan to drive to Pittsburgh. It had been signed for by Glenn Archer's administrative assistant. No response was ever filed. Laura placed her hands flat on Bev's desk. She looked at the payroll guarantee, at the signature line, at the notary seal, at the date in January. Every paycheck in this building existed because of that signature. Every 2 weeks, 411 people deposited their wages because one man's name stood behind a $12 million line of credit. That man had been sitting in a lobby chair for 9 hours while employees pointed at him and laughed. And the man who told the receptionist to make him wait had been intercepting his legal correspondence for 14 months. Bev spoke for the first time. She nodded toward the lobby, toward the steel letters above the entrance. "He put that sign up himself," she said. "Drilled every anchor into the wall. I held the level." Laura picked up the phone on Bev's desk and called the company's outside legal counsel. She read the operating agreement number. She read the guarantee renewal date. She asked one question: "Are these documents authentic and currently in force?" The answer took 4 seconds. Laura gathered every document into the folder, stood up, and carried it to the 4th floor. She sat down at her desk and opened her calendar. She scheduled a mandatory board meeting for 9 the following morning. Subject line: Shareholder Compliance Review. She sent the notice to all 8 independent directors. She did not send it to Glenn. The boardroom on the 4th floor of Prescott Meridian seated 12. At 9 the next morning, 8 directors were present. Glenn Archer was not among them. Laura had given no advance agenda, no briefing packet, no summary. She had sent one line: attendance required. No proxies. She placed the manila folder on the table and opened it. She began with the operating agreement. She read the relevant clause aloud. Section 4, paragraph B, the one requiring quarterly financial disclosures to the majority shareholder within 15 business days of each quarter's close. She read the name of the majority shareholder, Ryan M. Prescott. She read his ownership percentage, 58%. 2 directors looked at each other. One shifted in his chair. Then Laura spread the 14 letters across the center of the table in chronological order, January of 2025 through February of 2026. She read the dates stamped on each one. She read the name of the law firm. She pointed to the red received stamps. She held up the certified mail receipt and read the signature. The room was silent. Glenn's voice came from the doorway. He had found out about the meeting from his assistant 19 minutes after it started. He stood at the threshold with one hand on the frame. "He abandoned this company," Glenn said. "He signed the papers. He walked out. I kept the lights on. I kept 400 people employed. I kept this firm alive when he couldn't even come to work." Laura looked at him. She picked up the payroll credit facility agreement and held it so the table could see the signature page. "You kept 400 people employed with his money," she said. "His personal guarantee. His name on a $12 million credit line that he renewed 7 months ago. Every paycheck in this room, including yours, clears because of this signature. And you blocked his correspondence for 14 months. Glenn opened his mouth. Nothing came. The boardroom door opened wider behind him. Ryan Prescott stepped through it. Same jacket, same boots, same unhurried posture. He had been sitting in the lobby since 7:30, an hour and a half before the meeting started. Nobody had told him about it. He had come anyway. He walked the length of the conference table without speaking. He sat down in the only empty chair, at the far end, facing Laura. He looked around the room, at the directors, at the table, at the projected image of a scanned envelope on the screen behind Laura. "I'd like to see my quarterly reports," he said. Nobody moved. Glenn stood in the doorway with his hands still on the frame, his mouth slightly open. The board chair looked at Laura. Laura looked at Ryan. Then the board chair called a motion. 8 hands went up. Glenn Archer was suspended from all operational duties effective immediately, pending a full, independent audit. He was ordered to surrender his access credentials, his company-issued phone, and his building key card before leaving the premises. Ryan stood. He turned toward the door. As he passed Laura's chair, he slowed. Not enough to stop, but enough that she felt the stillness in him, the unhurried weight of a man who had sat in a chair for 9 hours and never once raised his voice. Then he stepped past Glenn and into the hallway. He did not look back. The independent audit took 3 weeks. A forensic accounting team from a firm in Philadelphia reviewed every subcontractor invoice, every purchase order, and every vendor payment processed under Glenn Archer's authority over the previous 28 months. What they found was precise and systematic. $2.1 million in inflated invoices had been routed through a subcontracting company registered to Glenn's brother-in-law in Cranberry Township. The company had a P.O. box, a bank account, and nothing else. No office, no employees, no equipment. The 3 ghost subcontractors on the bridge project were shell entities of the same kind. Invoices had been submitted monthly and approved by Glenn personally, bypassing a 2-signature protocol that had been part of the company's financial controls since 2019. Laura had never been informed the protocol existed. Glenn had removed it from the policy manual she had been given when she started. Glenn Archer was terminated. His personnel file was referred to the Allegheny County District Attorney's Office for criminal review. He was escorted from the Grant Street building by 2 members of the company's outside security contractor. He carried a single banker's box. He walked through the lobby, past the chair where Ryan had sat, past the steel letters on the wall, and through the glass doors. He did not speak. That evening, Laura sat in her 4th-floor office with the lights off. The city glowed through the window, the yellow arc of the Fort Pitt Bridge, the dark line of the Monongahela catching the last reflected light. She had been Glenn's hire. He had recommended her to the board. He had approved her title, her compensation, her office. Every operational decision she had made as CEO had been shaped by the information Glenn chose to share and the information he chose to bury. She had spent 18 months running a company on a partial picture, and she had not known it was partial until a man in work boots sat in her lobby and would not leave. She heard a knock on the open door frame. Ryan stood in the hallway, jacket draped over his arm, silhouetted against the corridor light. "You know I'm the person he picked," Laura said. She did not turn around. Ryan leaned one shoulder against the door frame. "He picked you because you were good at this." That part was not a lie. Laura did not answer right away, but her shoulders settled, a small motion, barely visible, the last degree of tension leaving a line that had been pulled taut for months. Ryan told her he wanted her to stay on as CEO. He would take an advisory seat on the board. No operational authority, no office, no reserve parking. He was not coming back full-time. He had a porch in Crafton to finish and a slate roof in Dormont that was not going to repair itself. Laura turned her chair to face him. "Then don't disappear again." Ryan held her gaze. The hallway light caught the side of his face. He nodded once. Then he turned and walked toward the elevator, his boot steps even on the carpet until the doors closed behind him. That night, Ryan pulled into the driveway on Route 19 just after 8. The kitchen light was on, the warm yellow square that meant Kate was at the table. He sat in the truck for a moment with the engine off, hands on the wheel, looking at that window. Then he went inside. Kate was in her usual spot, book propped against the sugar jar. She was not reading. She was watching the door. When Ryan came through it, she turned a page, too quickly, and pretended she had been reading all along. He hung his jacket on the hook by the entrance, set his keys on the counter, and sat down across from her. "You go to Pittsburgh a lot now," Kate said, without looking up from the book. "I'm fixing something I should have fixed a while back." She turned another page. "Is it a building?" Ryan looked at her, at the way she held the book, at the crease in the spine where she always folded it open, at the small stack of finished paperbacks on the shelf behind her chair. "Something like that," he said. Kate nodded. She did not ask anything else. She found her real page and started reading again. Later that evening, after Kate had gone to bed and the house was quiet, Laura called. She had found additional irregularities in a 2024 vendor contract, cost overruns on materials that did not match the delivered scope. The numbers were small individually, but the pattern matched what the auditors had already flagged. She needed Ryan to review the original bid documents against the actual purchase orders. Ryan sat at the kitchen table with the phone pressed to his ear, taking notes on the back of a grocery receipt. He told her he would come by in the morning. She said she would have the files pulled and waiting. There was a pause. Not uncomfortable, just present. The kind of pause where two people realize they have run out of business to discuss, but neither has hung up yet. "Good night, Ryan," she said. "Good night." He set the phone down. When he looked up, Kate was standing at the edge of the kitchen in her socks. She set a cup of tea on the table next to his chair, the white mug with the chipped handle, the one Ellen had always used. She had filled it almost to the brim the way Ellen used to, leaving just enough room so it would not spill on the walk from counter to table. Ryan looked at the tea. He reached over and rested his hand on the top of Kate's head for a moment. She leaned into it, just slightly, just enough. Then she padded back down the hall to her room, and he heard the soft click of her door. 3 months later, Glenn Archer's termination was finalized and his case file was transferred from internal counsel to the Allegheny County District Attorney for criminal prosecution. He was barred from all Prescott Meridian properties, prohibited from contacting any current employee, and stripped of his remaining unvested equity in the company. The forensic audit's final report ran 147 pages and documented a systematic pattern of financial manipulation spanning 26 months. The board restructured. 2 directors who had served on Glenn's compensation committee resigned quietly. Ryan took the advisory seat he had asked for, 1 meeting per month, quarterly financial reviews conducted from his kitchen table in the evenings after Kate went to bed. No office, no parking space, no nameplate on any door. He did not move back to Pittsburgh. He did not reclaim any title he had walked away from. He signed his advisory agreement at that same kitchen table, next to a cup of cold tea, with Kate reading 3 feet away. She did not ask what he was signing. He did not explain. The pen scratched the paper, and then he set it down and asked her what she wanted for dinner. Laura remained CEO. She hired a new COO from outside the company, a woman from a firm in Philadelphia with no connection to Glenn, no history with the old board, no reason to look the other way on anything. The bridge overpass project was re-audited top to bottom. The structural engineering was corrected. The live load calculation Ryan had caught at the trailer was off by 8 pounds per square foot, enough to compromise the upper deck pour. The ghost subcontractors were removed from the roster. The revised contract went back out to bid with verified firms, and construction resumed 8 weeks later on a corrected timeline. On Bev Loomis's last day before retirement, she stopped by Laura's office carrying a small cardboard box under one arm. She set it on the guest chair and reached inside. She pulled out the framed, groundbreaking photograph from 2017, the one Laura had found in the basement archive 3 months ago, the one that had started all of this. "Keep this somewhere you can see it," Bev said. She placed it on Laura's desk, next to the monitor, and adjusted the angle so the light did not catch the glass. Then she walked out without looking back, her keys still in her hand out of 22 years of habit. On a Thursday evening in late October, Laura finished the last page of her quarterly review and shut down her computer. She took the elevator to the lobby. The building was quiet. The cleaning crew had finished the east wing. The receptionist had left an hour earlier. The marble floor caught the last of the overhead light before the automatic dimmer kicked in. Ryan was sitting in the lobby. Same chair, same spot. His jacket was folded across his lap. His work boots rested flat on the polished floor. Kate sat in the chair across from him, a paperback open across her knees, reading under the lobby light. She turned a page without looking up. Laura stopped at the edge of the corridor. She looked at them, the man in the chair, the girl with the book, the quiet between them that did not need filling. She walked across the marble and sat down in the chair next to Ryan, the same chair she had taken that first evening, 9 months ago, when she did not know his name or what it meant. "You're waiting again," she said. Ryan turned to look at her. The lobby light caught the edge of his jaw, the line of his collar, the stillness in his hands. "Not this time," he said. The overhead lights dimmed on their timer. Kate turned another page. Nobody stood up. Nobody needed to. On Ryan's kitchen table back on Route 19, next to a signed advisory agreement and a cup of cold tea, sat a folded note in Kate's handwriting. It said 3 words, "Dad. Me. Here." 9 hours in that lobby. He never said a word. and it turned out to be the most expensive silence that building had ever known.